Hello and welcome to ParenTea, a show where we sip on a cup of tea and dive into conversation about parenting. I'm Miley, your host, and join me today, as usual, is our resident expert, Dr. Khanh Tran. Welcome, Dr. Khanh Tran, to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me back.
And before we dive into conversation today, let's take a sit back, relax, and enjoy a sip of tea. This is something comforting about sharing a cup of tea during a conversation. Is that true, Dr. Tran?
Yes, and the appropriate word is soothing and comfort. Absolutely, and it can bring us together and connect in a way where we can communicate even more effectively.
Yep.
If I could share real quick. My wife does tea meditation.
Wow.
A group of people.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
I like that idea. We take tea, we drink tea, and then we discuss about any topic, especially parenting. And today, I have this ginger tea. It's prepared by Mr. Tuyết. To be really good. So what tea you have today, Dr. Tran?
It's coconut macadamia tea.
Wow, it's the first time I heard of coconut macadamia tea. So they roasted that, right? As much as give the flavor of like coconut and macadamia nut. Wow, I want to try it because I love both. I love both coconut and I also love macadamia nut too. So definitely we'll try the next time. So let's dive into the topic for today that's very dear and important to the parent, which is how to work with or how to deal with children that have mental illness. Unfortunately, no parent wants to have to go with that process in their life. However, nowadays, so many children diagnosed with mental illness, and that's become such a common thing that everybody talk about. And because it's so common, that it's also become something that the parent need to be aware, need to learn, especially all the early signs that would help them to prevent or cope or help treatment for their children. So let's dive into that. A little bit more detail, and Dr. Tran gonna share with us his wisdom, his expertise in working with family in the last 20 years. So Dr. Tran, what is some of the early signs for parents to be able to diagnose or to realize that something abnormal about their children's behavior, and that could relate to early state of mental health?
There are many signs we can look at, but I'll start with this one. This one in particular occurs in children, and that is anger. So depression in children may manifest very differently than it would in adults. With children, we see a whole lot of frustration, irritation, anger. And so anger, in terms of the expression, may appear that they are in conflict with us. It may come off as very disrespectful, but it's a great indication that the child is struggling. There's also excessive worries and concerns. These children, I have a child who suffers from severe anxiety that I'm seeing, who is worried about school, worried about her peers, what her peers think, worried about how her teachers will judge her, worried about the weather. So sometimes if it gets too windy, she can't go to school, worried about just about everything. So excessive worries is the key. So it has to be excessive to the point where it debilitates the child, means it prevents the child from wanting to go to school. There are also physiological signs like complaints of headaches, stomach aches, or heart beating fast, mind racing. So these sort of things that children complain about that prevents them from, they provide these excuses to prevent them from going to school. Now that being said, they're just not excuses. If they have anxiety or depression, it is very likely that they are displaying these symptoms. But it gets to the point, as I said, it debilitates them. They may show lack of motivation to perform, whether it's school, they can't do their chores, they can't sit with the family at the dinner table. So they lack motivation to perform or do anything. Tied to that is they may display a lack of energy. They don't seem to have the power or the energy to function at all. These kids who suffer from anxiety and depression can be hyper self-critical. They can distort cognition, meaning they can distort their perception of themselves. So they don't value themselves. They don't have a sense of self-worth. And they may perceive others as devaluing them. So they have this tendency to misinterpret events and situations and circumstances. And they engage in what's called negativistic thinking. So it seems like they're always having these negative thoughts about themselves, about others in the world around them.
Wow. What about with all the symptoms that you mentioned? But what about kids who lock themselves in the room, who don't talk to anybody, and play video game? Is that also related to kind of like early stage of mental health?
That can be, so we call that escapist behavior. So isolating and avoidance is very typical anyways of adolescents, but when it is in the extreme where they're not communicating with the family or they're not engaged with peers outside of video games, they're escaping. And so it's important to recognize what it is that they're escaping from. But yes, so I want to make it clear, not all kids who play video games show a mental illness, but if it is to the point where they become so obsessed and it becomes their life, then you could have an issue.
So when they upset with that, meaning that all they would do as soon as they go home, and besides, taking shower, eating dinner, play video game, and then sleep. But if kids still be able to do well in school and maintain A, does that mean that maybe he's addictive to video game? Or that could be some side balance between video game addiction and early stage of mental health.
Yes, we have to be very careful of interpreting that. Let's say if he is functioning for the most part in other areas of life, in his daily life, that it is not disruptive. He can be preoccupied with video games, and it's okay. Most of the time, I see kids go home and they de-stress, and that's their way of distressing and playing video games. Other times, they come home, jump on the video game, and they socialize. They connect with friends that way too. So that's why we have to be careful interpreting that as just a sign of mental illness. So when I say that when they get obsessed to the point where they're so debilitated that they can't go to school or they don't want to function at all, they don't want to relate to or socialize with family and friends. And then there are other symptoms associated with that, such as irritability, we mentioned anger, excessive worries, being self-critical, lacking energy, feeling helpless and hopeless. And here's another one that I see with kids in therapy. They cry. So they may spend a lot of time in their bedroom, isolated, crying. And for some, they may have suicidal ideations or thoughts. So all of that in combination is what we would have to gather before we can determine whether it is a mental illness.
Wow. So with that symptom, are they treatable? And is that considered early stage or middle stage or the severe, though that you mentioned?
Yeah, so we like to measure when this occurs. Let's say if they have anxiety or depression, I like to measure where they are on the spectrum of, let's say, anxiety, mild, moderate, or severe. So it's important for me to measure where they're at so I know where I can go with the assessment or treatment. What is important is when you recognize these symptoms, it is crucial to address them with a child. So let's say if you're worried that they're isolating themselves in the room, it's okay to, what I say, check in so you can determine what's going on in the room, in the bedroom. So if you find that they're just socializing with their friends, then that's okay. Like I said, the combination of these symptoms should equate to debilitation. So that means they're not able to function. They're not able to communicate effectively. These are the things that they're not able to behave. And you as a parent know the pattern of their behaviors. If they're typically a happy kid or a content kid, but yet they show this progression of irritation, frustration, and agitation, then that's something to monitor.
So with that, with what you mentioned, what should the parent do? Knock out to the door, check them more often, bring the kid out of their comfort zone, talk to them, look at them in the eye and see what's wrong. What would be the good advice for the parent to navigate through this process without engage or to children privacy or something like that?
Yeah, checking in once in a while is okay. Meaning, you may be inclined to talk to them. So it may look something like this. I couldn't help but to notice that you've been getting frustrated or angry more often than not. Is there something that I could help you with? Is there something that we could do to help with your agitation and irritation? Is there something I don't know that's happening that is causing this? So you can ask questions like that. Now, I don't expect a therapist to provide any kind of intensive or extensive treatment. My point is this: the connection and the communication is all key. The connection and staying with the child's thoughts and emotions is very important. The parent has a power, although they may not have the intervention capability. The power is in the connection. You are the parent. So by staying connected, by talking to them or checking in, you can make a difference. Now, if it is too extreme, then it's also okay to call for help too. So you may want to find a qualified counselor or therapist to assist the child.
So with the counseling, meaning we can call to the psychiatrist, schedule appointment so that they can help children with mental illness. But sometimes children do not admit that they have that problem. They don't admit that. How to get help?
Yes, well, it's a hard thing for them to go over, and maybe part of it is because they don't know where to go with all these feelings. They're overwhelmed, they're inundated, and flooded by a lot of stimulation. But that's why going back to you as a parent communicating with the child is important. Now, when I say communicate, I think that the greater part of that communication is very key. And that key is listening. That means listening to the feelings and thoughts. Listening means whatever they are saying. For example, I feel suicidal. You don't want to dismiss that. I've had parents who will dismiss that by saying, oh, no, you don't. That's okay. You'll get over it. You have everything to be grateful for. What do you mean you're depressed? It's that be very careful about that, because that's a sure and certain way to shut the child down. We want to be able to get them to speak about their feelings and thoughts, and to do so freely. But to begin that process, we have to be listening, and listening with empathy.
I guess parents need to pay attention more to their children and see if there's some parent that's a little bit like what the early side that Dr. Tran mentioned, and take the time to talk to them and get to know them and just let them open up and share the story. Creating a supporting environment at home is crucial for parents, especially for children that go through mental illness. What step would you advise for a parent to take to fostering such an environment at home?
Yes, I'm glad you asked this question, because the environment that they live in, the context for which they are exposed, becomes identified by the child. So what that means is, if the environment at home is filled with conflict, then the child will identify with that conflict, and that can manifest into all sorts of suffering, all sorts of pain. So as much peace that we can maintain in our home environment, the better for the child. It is that simple. It's very much like at work too. We can relate to this, right? If the work environment is contentious and it's filled with conflict, it creates a lot of tension in us. So as peaceful as an environment that we can create for the child, the better for the child. But it has to start with us, because it is we who create the environment. The home is not a home. It's just a space. But what makes it a home are the people who exist within that home. And what makes it homey is the context, the environment that we create. So the equanimity that we create in that environment makes it for a comforting home, which then allows the child to flourish.
Thank you, Dr. Tran, for the advice. So when should the parent seek for professional help to help them with their children's mental health concern? And is there any resource available for the parent out there?
When it gets to the point where it is clear to us as parents that the child is not able to function, help. So it's time to involve. Get a call from a parent who says, my child is not wanting to go to school.
You are
I can't
listening.
get him up. I tried to pull him out from the bed, but all he did was get up and slipped under the bed. And I've had that happen. And at that point, if this continues to occur, and they show all those symptoms that I had aforementioned, then it's time to get help for the child. If you feel that you've provided enough in terms of what I called a peaceful environment, and it has yet helped, and it's beyond your ability to help or repair, it's time to involve a professional.
Thank Dr. Tran. And with that, you are listening and watching the talk show ParenTea. And if you need help with parenting, you need professional help to talk to your child or to help treat your children with mental illness. There's a lot of help out there, and you can just look up for mental health assistant or mental health. There should be a lot of facility and doctor clinic. They treat mental health. But if you would like to schedule the appointment for consultation with Dr. Khanh Tran, you can dial the number 307-655-5510. Again, 307-655-5510. And to have a private consultation for your family situation and how Dr. Tran could help you and your child. And Dr. Tran, there is still a lot of stigma around the mental illness. What advice could you have for the parent in dealing with the stigma and help educate others, including their own child?
And it is stigma upon stigma upon stigma that creates for this greater stigma that is a problem that we're dealing with. And what I mean by that is there's self-stigma. Sometimes we think that mental illness is a problem, and therefore we shouldn't talk about it because there's something wrong with us. There's also familial stigma that maybe family think that if the pressure of family to be good, to be great, to be happy is very strong, and you don't want to upset the family. You don't want to disappoint the family. There's cultural stigma. There's something wrong with you if you're suffering from a mental illness, among other things. But the point is, all of this creates for tremendous self-doubt and a whole lot of shame. Of course, it's hard for people to bring forth issues or discuss issues, or even to admit that we have a mental illness, because all these stigmas that we're defending against. So that's why it's important that we as parents, we have to be okay about bringing these things up. We have to be okay about talking about these things, discussing these things, and then furthermore, understanding them, as opposed to trying to sweep it under the rug. As I said, as opposed to saying, it's okay, you get over it. These things will pass. You have no reason to feel upset. We don't want to dismiss these kids. This just reinforces the stigmas. And then it just reinforces the feelings that they have, that is self-doubt or shame. Because the message is, oh, I thought I'm feeling sad, but my mom and my dad, they're telling me that I shouldn't, that these feelings aren't real. They are not real. So I might as well ignore them. And that can create deeper issues and more problems. And it could create conditions of damage, self-esteem, for instance, or destructive or harmful self-judgment. So it's important to address these issues so we can alleviate these stigmas for our children so they can speak about it.
So in your opinion, Dr. Tran, you advise for the parent is to talk about that instead of like not talk about that or ignore situation. But how do we bring it up to the children? Do we just talk in an open discussion with other siblings around, or just a one-on-one with a child? And then should we even mention the word mental illness to them?
Yes, if that's the case that they're suffering from, the more we throw that word or these concepts out there, the more we normalize it, because it is something that many people are suffering from. And mental illness is okay. We can embrace it. So how we relay that message allows them to be okay with their experiences. And yes, you can talk to them. I prefer to talk to them in privacy. Even when they come with their parents, this is how I practice. I will ask the parent to sit and wait, and I speak to the child first so I can get a better understanding of what their understanding is that they're struggling with. And it doesn't matter if it's a child of 2 years old, 10 or 18, I will speak to the child first. I want to get an idea what her understanding of mental illness is, and why she's coming to see me. So I would be inclined to start with a question. Do you know why you're here? Can you tell me why you're coming to see me? So then I would then go on to address some of the issues that she may be or he may be struggling with. So speak it out, talk it out, allows the child to normalize his or her experiences instead of holding on to that shame and guilt that I mentioned.
For today's topic is about for parenting on children with mental health. This is a very hard topic, but it's also a very big topic to discuss within the limited time that we have, like half hour. So for that reason, we would like to end the talk show here today, and we'll continue with the next episode when we dive deep into more issue and more things that parents need to learn or need to be aware and get the advice from professionals like Dr. Khanh Tran, who spent years working with family and with children and helping these children with their mental health. Until then, we'll see you at the next episode on mental health issue.